who's calling in from Australia. Hi, Yair, how are you doing? Thank you for joining us at this crazy hour.
Yes.
I just
Good
want to
morning,
give
everybody.
I just want to give a brief little intro, or maybe you can give us an intro about who you are. I know that we've got a couple of clients that we work on together, so it's great to have you on the webinar. Tell us a little bit about your role in this whole property process and what people should be aware of when they are now thinking about going down this road.
Well, I mean, first of all, just a quick introduction. We're an office that my father started in 1969, so we've been doing this for 2, 3 years. And when I joined, we started working with foreigners, and we pretty much guide people by the hand, very much like Hold Realty. Guide the people from abroad buying in Israel, going through the process. And the role of a lawyer is very, very crucial in real estate transaction. In very briefly, we're the insurance in a way. At the end of the day, we are the one in charge of guiding you through the process after Hold Real Estate found you the place to buy. We're the next in line to help you through the entire process in making sure that you're protected and getting you the property that you want in your name and securely.
And I think that's a big worry for people. And just to clarify, can you also, what you're going to give us your presentation, can you clarify your relationship between a broker or an estate agent and the client? Because I think some people sometimes get confused that you represent the client in the transaction.
Yes, I mean mostly it's actually a funny question, or in Israel has a very unique situation that a lawyer can hypothetically represent both parties, buyer and seller. That's very, very rare, and we highly not recommend it. Sorry, we do not recommend it because you want your lawyer to be working for you, to be representing you. Usually, the real estate agent will help you find the property that you like. It's very, very important to work with reputable agents. An agent that checks the deals before he knows who's getting you, not going to offer you something that you don't want, or something that is not, there's issues with the builder, issues with the property. I've had I have to say, with Hold Realty, I have very good experience so far. They do their due diligence prior to presenting you with any property, and it's not, I can't say that about every agent I ever worked with.
So what do people need to know? There are lots of questions about should I wait and buy a property after I make Aliyah because I get a bigger tax break? Can you kind of give some high level guidance to people who have tuned in, who want to know more?
Yeah, the real answer to that is you need to speak to your lawyer and ahead of time, because we do the tax planning for you, and really depends. For example, if you're going to buy over the green line, then someone who's neither an Israeli resident nor citizen will not have to pay any purchase tax. So,
Yeah.
but you have to do it at least 2 years prior to signing the agreement.
Yeah.
If you're going to buy within the green line, then if you want to use the benefits of either an Israeli resident or Aliyah, you have to do it within a certain time from signing the contract. So it's very important to let your attorney know what are your plans, what are you thinking, what is the stage that you're in, and where are you thinking of buying, because it can make you differences of hundreds of thousands of shekels. If you plan it, if you plan the purchase properly.
Yeah. Arab, I believe you have a presentation that you want to share
That's
and
right.
just take us through. So I'm going to let you do that now. I know it's a very short one with some nice pictures. So
yeah, I'll try to do it as short as I can.
no, that's okay.
All right.
We're doing well on time.
Okay. So first of all, the first thing I would say is I'm going to give quite a bit of information here. I'm not really expecting everybody to understand everything from the get-go. So, exactly as Andrew said before, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. The idea is to give you some idea of things you need to think about or consider when you're going into the process of starting the process of buying in Israel. All
Sounds
right. The
good.
main two topics that I'm going to speak to you about is, first of all, the purchase process, what to expect, and then I'll go slightly into talking about taxes. Now, it's very, very important that, there's a lot of information out there, Google, Facebook, group forums,
That's huge.
everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody hears there's a lot of information. People see in groups, they Google, they search, they find an article. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of misinformation out there as well, and there's a lot of outdated information. So it's very, very important not to just rely on what you see online or what you research, but actually speak to a professional who knows what they're talking about. All right, so we'll start with purchasing, your home in Israel, and as I said, I've done it a few times. All right, I would say that, of course, I will touch here in three main types of properties. There are, of course, many others, but these are the main ones to consider or think about because this is what most people buy. So the first one would be actually buying in a new construction, an apartment that is being built as at the moment. The way it would start is by actually putting an offer of purchase. It's non-binding registration form. The builder would usually ask you to sign such a form, which will include which apartment you're looking, purchase price, sometimes even payment schedule, but not always, and they ask you to sign it. Now, if it would be, it's something that is basically coming just from the buyer's place, and the seller does not sign it, the builder does not sign it, because if he signs it, it's actually could be considered by the tax office as a valid purchase agreement, and then you will have to pay taxes according to that date and not according to the day you actually sign the contract, and will not necessarily be able to negotiate the contract properly on your behalf. Including with signing the offer of purchase, you would also ask to be put some kind of a down payment, a deposit. This is something that we usually ask to make sure that it's refundable, but it's not always. And the idea behind it is the builder wants to see that how serious you are. It's not necessarily be very high, but it's a way to show that you're actually serious in the purchase. Now, it's very, very important that if there's anything you negotiate, or the real estate agent will help you negotiate, will be included in that. Because if it's not going to be included in the offer of purchase, then the builder would most likely say, okay, it wasn't included, and will not add it to the contract. There are many things.
Make sure you dot every T and cross every I on that contract, because that's what's going to be binding.
Yeah, but this is even prior to the contract. This is like the registration form. So if you're promised a certain size of kitchen, if you're promised a certain allowance for upgrades, if you were told that they're going to give you additional or parking spot, a storage unit, anything has to be specified in it to make sure that we will be able to put it into the contract later on. And it is important to know, though, that there will be additional costs, meaning even though in the offer of purchase there are amounts that will say how much the apartment cost, you will end up upgrading, so you need to take that into consideration, because people usually upgrade the kitchen, upgrade certain things in the apartment, like tiles, finishes, bathrooms, toilets, and it's sometimes you have to consider also where are you coming from, because in Israel, when you buy an apartment, it usually comes bare. You might have kitchen cabinets, bathroom cabinets, but that's it. If you need cupboards, if you need light fixtures, these are all things that would be additional and not included in the purchase price. And this is not necessarily bad or good. It's just it just works a bit differently here in Israel.
It's just different. I remember when I first arrived in Israel and started dealing with new developments and realizing that built-in cupboards in South Africa, where I come from, was just part of the deal. It's like you don't get a new property without built-in cupboards, but here it's quite different. So that's a very good point, and I think Julian will touch on that a little bit later on when we talk about new developments and how we break down the costs.
Yeah, and of course that's included. It does not come with any furnishing. It does not come with kitchen utensil like
Yeah.
a stove, an oven, all these things and things you need to consider that are not going to be included. By the way, that's not just in new build, also in second hand, which is
I was gonna say when I moved into my apartment, I had to move by cupboards. Like you move with your cupboards and your light fittings in Israel. Interestingly enough.
yes, yeah. Now, an existing apartment, it's fun to see. We're talking about like Australia, that I'm currently in Australia. In Israel, you make an offer. An agent, your agent will make an offer to the seller's agent, and then you'll go, you negotiate back and forth until you come to an agreed price. It's funny because it depends on where you're coming from. In Australia, for example, what they do is auction. Most apartments, most places that are being sold between individuals, not construction, are being sold in an auction, not necessarily with off the plan negotiations like we do. So we need to think that in Israel it works differently. So the way it works, like you make an offer, and then you agree set of commercial terms of the purchase. Again, you do the payment terms. When are you going to get the apartment delivered? If you need to take a mortgage, where the financing coming from, payment schedule, etc. And once we have that, we go to contract, and it's the lawyer's responsibility to make sure that everything that is agreed upon is put in the contract. Now, unlike the new construction where the buyer would sign an offer of purchase, here there are no binding offers in Israel. The law actually requires the only time when you're required to have a signed agreement between parties is in the purchase of sale of a land of a property. Other than that, a handshake is fine, is good enough. But when it comes to buying and selling property, it has to be done in a binding signed contract. And that's why we also again say, do not sign a zichron dvarim, the memorandum of understanding. Many times, sellers would want to sign it, and then they would ask, let's both parties sign it, and we just tell all lawyers, say, do not sign such documents because it's committing without all the final negotiations. I told once a client, do not sign such a document. Despite my recommendation, he signed it. And then when I tried to negotiate with the other lawyer, I was telling him, okay, these are terms that I cannot agree to, and we want to cancel the agreement. He says, sorry, you can't. You already signed it. There's no way to back out of it. So, it's very, very important that you do not sign it. What is the way to overcome that is that, and that's again very important where your agent comes, is that the agent puts in writing what the parties agreed upon and send it to everybody, and that's the way. The other important. So, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
All
you.
right. The other options. Sorry, I just yeah. The other thing that is very important to remember in Israel, that there are no contingencies. Very many other places around the world, you can sign the contract and then you have a certain time to check the apartment, for example, physically, get an engineer to inspect it, or get yourself pre-approved with a mortgage. In Israel, you cannot do it. You have to do it prior to signing the contract, and if not, you bought apartment the way it is. Actually, the only two words in a contract in Israel, which English is not an official language, so you cannot sign a purchase agreement in English. But the only two words that always make themselves into a second-hand purchase is the words "as is." You're buying the apartment as is. So unless there's something in it that you want to change, that the seller is taking upon himself, it has to be done in a contract. Otherwise, the apartment is bought as is. And the same thing with financing. If you need financing and you're not being approved, then you will have to find another way of getting the funds to finalize the purchase. And that's why it's very important to take care of all these things prior to signing. Now, again, this is where the lawyer comes in into the game. Is we tell you what to do and when to do it to make sure the entire process is done and in a very smooth way.
Yeah, and I know that for sure that was something that was flagged very early on when we arrived here, that once you put your signature on that document, you have to do all your due diligence before, because it is binding, and you will be held to it. So that's very, very good information for people. Just a quick, just to go back quickly onto the new construction, which I think Julian will also cover, in terms of foreigners taking out a mortgage, and in terms of people handling this. Let's say people are not traveling to Israel at the moment. Can all of this be done remotely? Do people have to be in Israel to open accounts and sign the documents? How does that work?
So I think, it's something that we not everybody knows how to do it, but I think in a way, because we mostly deal with foreigners, we got to a high point during COVID that we were able to buy and sell properties for our clients without them stepping in Israel. All the documents can be signed abroad. We know how to do it. We know how to get the documents verified wherever you are in order to be able to go through with the purchase, and that includes everything. And I'm literally mean everything. Other than sign the documents, wherever you live, the rest of with these documents that we set ahead of time, we can do everything from signing the contract, opening a bank account, signing on your mortgage, taking possession, transferring bills to your names, everything we can do for you. And this is one of why it's very important to take an attorney, not necessarily myself, but any attorney that specializes with dealing with foreigners, because it can't always, meaning unless you know what you're doing, you're not going to be able to do it. So you need to take someone who knows how to take care of all these things for you.
You need a team on the ground, as they say, that can hold your hand through the process. So
You're jumping to one of the last slides in my presentation.
let's see it.
All right, the last type of property that I'm going to touch very, very briefly is, just so you need to be aware of it, and I'm sure people heard about it, is Tama 38. Tama 38 basically is a country-wise zoning plan to strengthen older building against earthquakes. It's basically the rule of thumb is that these buildings has received the building permits prior to 1980. There are two types, mostly two types of Tama 38. One is actually existing a building that you attach additionals and strengthen on the outside without knocking the building down. And now the second one is knocking down the building and rebuilding the entire thing. Now, we're not sure how much longer it's going to be because there are talks about canceling it. Definitely canceling the Tama 38-1, which is strengthening an existing building. But knocking down and rebuilding, it's something which is much better in a way. We like it much better because it's not an add-on. It's not an apartment. Suddenly you add another room from the side, which is not convenient. It's also newer systems for the entire building and not just the existing building which you attach to. So, if the trouble is some areas you have no choice. These are the only apartments that you have. But if there are an option, we would always highly recommend going on the Tama 38-1, which is knocking down the building and rebuilding it.
And I think they sometimes add new elevators, and I think the aesthetic of the building gets revamped on the outside.
But that's both of them. Meaning both Tama 38. You add usually nowadays mostly they have to add parking spots in one way or another. Add an elevator. The entire facade of the building is being redone because it's also part of the strengthening of the building. And the new apartments are sitting on new systems, but all the apartments not necessarily. So again, you have to check case by case. Certain places are there's no other choice. Sometimes you cannot do knocking down the building and rebuilding it because of zoning rights, because of building permits. But if there is, we usually highly recommend going with a Tama 32 as much as possible. Now, going to contract, what do we do? Now, this is a stage that is very, very important, part of, the agent's job and the lawyer job, and I know that Hold Realty does that. When they inspect the builder you're working with, they inspect the property before they suggest it to you, like I said earlier on, and it's part of the lawyer's responsibility also to check it before you go to contract, sometimes, many times, even prior to even giving an offer. And that's what we do. Is part of it is a title check. We do search and we're seeing if there's any liens or encumbrances on the property, on the sellers, to make sure they don't have any debt. In Israel, you don't have any title insurance or escrow companies, and that's your lawyer's responsibility. So in a way, this is, I know that in the US, for example, many deals don't even have attorneys involved in them. In Israel, this is one of the most important roles that you have to engage as a lawyer, because we are your insurance in the process. We are the one that check the property for you, again, from a legal perspective, not from an engineering perspective. And we check for liens and any other problems. It could be, that it come back, a quick check at the beginning would be come back with perfect, there's no issue, go ahead. Sometimes it comes like, don't touch it with a 10-foot pole, or the question that we need to understand. For example, if the apartment is being sold to you as 100 square meters, but in the registry it's 50 square meters, we need to understand why. If it's because they built illegally, then I would tell you, don't touch it, don't even think about it. 50% of an apartment is illegal. You're going into something very dangerous, because the municipality might ask you to knock it down. But if they did take a building permit but never registered it, then it's okay. So it really depends on the question, and this is part of what we do and part of what we check, at the beginning of the process. After we do the title check and you agreed on the commercial terms, we start the contract negotiation. We do the commercial terms, the price and payments. For example, if you're taking a mortgage, we always try to push off the payment coming out of the mortgage to the end. So you're not going to have to start paying your mortgage payments prior to taking possession of the apartment. In some countries, when you take the mortgage, you have to take the entire amount at once. In Israel, it's different. You can actually take it in portions. You can take, whenever you have to make a payment, you take part of the mortgage, and that's why you need to know that. And we decide when is going to be possession. For example, if you want to take possession as soon as possible, but you do want to take a mortgage, then it will tell you usually give us at least 60 to 75 days at the minimum to get you the mortgage. Because if you're going to have delivery within 30 days, we will not be able to get you the mortgage in place because it's too short of a time. Again, like I said before, unless it's in a contract, it doesn't exist. So if there's anything included that stays in the apartment, have to make sure it's in there. If it's something that the seller has to fix, it has to be in there. And then, of course, all the legal terms. Now, the defining date of a transaction is also very important. In many places around the world, there's the term of closing, the day that you make the last payment, take possession, that's the defining date of the contract. In Israel, it's the opposite. The signing day, the day you sign the contract, is the defining date of the entire transaction. Even if you bought from a builder and the apartment is going to be ready in 2, 3, 4 years' time, the defining date is the day you sign the contract, and everything derives from that. So the tax has to be paid within 60 days of the signing. The report has to be done within 30 days. The purchase tax has to be paid within 60 days. Even if your apartment is going to be ready in a long time, this is when you have to pay it. So, there are terms and things that you need to realize that are just work differently. And you have the due diligence, which, 1 second, sorry. We went to the next one. The due diligence of the property is, like we said, before, there are no contingencies, and that's why we highly recommend, again, part of prior to signing the agreement, we highly recommend getting an appraiser. Because it's for two things. Even if you're not, first of all, you want to know if you're taking a mortgage and you're relying on the financing, you want to know what is the appraised, make sure there's no big difference. But also you want to make sure that there are no illegal parts of the property, meaning the seller has not enclosed parts or built parts illegally, and that's the job of the appraiser. The mortgage application, again, you want to make sure that the bank will give you the loan you're looking for. Now, I am talking now a bit about the job of a mortgage broker, which we don't have here with us tonight. But you want to make sure that the bank will give you it. And part of the thing is that the banks wants to make sure that not all your ready income goes towards the mortgage payments, because they want to make sure that you'll be able to keep the payments. And if you're taking everything, you don't have any money for food or medication that you need, then you're not going to be able to pay it. So the bank checks into these things, and it's very important to get it pre-approved prior to the signing. And engineer, of course.
Sorry, Yair, if I can just come in here
one.
This is specifically to second-hand apartments.
Not necessarily, no. Also to first buyer, because if you want to get pre-approved before signing contract and make sure what the banks is willing to give you as a loan, you can also take it. You want to get it checked also before signing at first, like an apartment from a builder.
Yeah, but I mean, so firstly, just the pre-approval on the mortgage is valid for 6 months. And typically the banks, whenever we've really approached them for mortgages, that they have taken the purchase price as the fair value. So we don't actually need in projects to get these appraisers in.
Right. Sorry, that's correct. I'm saying the appraiser, yes. The appraiser is something you take only when you buy a second hand. A first hand, the builder, usually they have a bank which gives the financing, and that's the banks, whoever the bank gives a mortgage would rely on it. But the mortgage application is something that we do recommend still taking, even if you buy beforehand, to make sure you be able to, based on your income, be able to get the mortgage you're looking to get. And the engineer is something that is important to have, because maybe, when you buy secondhand, it's before you signing it, engineer, but when you buy from a builder, it's important to get inspected before delivery, to make sure that everything was built according to the plans, according to specs, and according to the standards.
Right.
All right. And the next topic, thank you, Julian. The next topic that I'm going to touch also very briefly is taxes, because I think we're running a bit out of time. Okay, so I will start by saying that the general tax rate, we'll start with what types of taxes there are. So the first one is purchase tax, and this is what I'm going to speak mostly about right now this evening. The other, or this morning, depends on where you are around the world. There are betterment tax, which is tax for additional building rights that you will have. This usually applies only on secondhand. In Israel, you do not have property tax. Property tax, as it's around the world, many times it's a tax that you pay to the local authority based on the value of the property, and it's the owner pays it. In Israel, you do not have that. Whatever you have instead is what's called arnona. It's municipal tax. The difference is that it's not based on the value. It's based on your location, and it's based on the size of the property. So you have a certain amount per square meter of the property, and it's multiplied by the size of the property. And it's not necessarily paid by the owner, because if the apartment is rented, it would mostly be paid by the person using it, by the renter. And so this is the difference between property tax around the world and arnona, which is the closest equivalent that we have. But again, it's not based on the value, and it's usually paid by whoever's using it, not by the owner. Now, if we're now going deeper into the purchase tax, so the general tax rates for anybody is 8%. Until about 5.9, and any amount over 5.9 million shekels, you'll be taxed at 10%. There are two possible discounts. The first one is Israeli resident buying his single residency, and I'm specifically saying residency, not first, because if you are a resident buying an apartment, then you sell it and buy again, you're still eligible for the lower tax rates. And the second discount is Aliyah, which is what we're going to talk about now. So what is an Israeli resident? So, the rule of thumb is that you spend 183 days in Israel. But the example that I like to give, if, someone in a family, one of the spouses works for an international company and literally, is out of the country Sunday to Thursday and comes back to Friday and Shabbos to Israel. That person not necessarily would be 183 days in Israel, but the spouse lives in Israel, the kids go to school here, they pay taxes in Israel, the doctors in the medical, everything is in Israel. So even though the person is not 183 days in Israel, he would still be considered, he or she would be considered Israeli residents for that purpose. When we file the report to the tax, it's my responsibility as a lawyer to portray the picture, paint the picture to the tax office to show that your center of living is in Israel. And as long as we do it, then you will be able to get the lower tax rates. Now, what are the lower tax rates? So as you can see here, it's, again, no need to write it. You'll get the presentation with all the details. It starts at 0% until 1.292 million shekels, and then goes up to 3.5%, 5%. And on the higher end, it goes also to 8 and 10%. Now, it's very important to know that you can still buy nowadays before moving to Israel, for example, and still be able to get it. You might have to originally, sorry. You might have originally have to pay the 8 and 10%, but if you move to Israel within 2 years from signing the contract, again, going back to what I said before, that the defining date is the day you sign the contract. If you move to Israel within 2 years, I'll be able to get you all the difference to the lower tax rate back. I have a client who moved to Israel a year and 11 months after he signed the contract, and we were able to give him all his money back. And like I said before, it has to be the single residency. It's not relevant in case of second purchase, meaning if you already own, you're not eligible to get that lower tax rate. The second discount is the Aliyah rights. The Aliyah rights starts at 0.5%, and it goes up to, sorry, I apologize. Up to 1.93, you'll pay 0.5%. Anything above that, you'll pay 5%. You do not get to the rates of 8 and 10%. Now, it can be used for purchasing starting year prior to signing the agreement. The same thing as for residency, you have to move to Israel within 2 years. Here, you have to make Aliyah within 1 year of signing the contract, and you can use it up to 7 years post making Aliyah. There is a slight, a very small thing that not very known and not very used, that if you're buying a new build on paper, that 1 year period can be extended to a year from when the builder gets the letter of occupancy, the Tofes Arba, and no more than 3 years from signing. You have to move to make Aliyah within 3 years from signing the contract, whichever one comes first. And you have to make Aliyah even the apartment is not ready. If the apartment is going to be ready in 4 years, you have to make Aliyah within 3 years, and you are still able to get the lower tax rates of 0.5% and 5%. And this can be used for a second purchase, but as long as it's going to be the apartment you're going to be living in. It cannot be an investment apartment. It has to be for the apartment you live in. Now, you're going to ask me which one is better for to use. So first of all, you speak to your lawyer to understand what are your plans to do it. But if we look just at the numbers, these two rights equalize at about 6 million shekels. Anything lower than the 6 million shekels, you're better off using the residency. Anything above 6 million shekels, you're better off using your Aliyah rights. And that's just as a rule of thumb. But again, because Aliyah rights you can use for a second purchase, if you want to buy 2 apartments, you want to play with these, and we can play with it, meaning we can decide which right to use. And that's why it's very important to do it together, with your lawyer, talk about your plans, and do a proper tax planning.
Wow, yeah, you really summarized that so well. It's always so complicated for people when they're thinking about the benefits in Aliyah and residency and living. So I think that was really, really a useful slide that you showed us there. So thank you so much for that.
And this goes back to what you said at the beginning when I said plan ahead. Speak to your attorney prior to starting the process to understand what is ahead, what are you planning, and do the best tax, because it could be a difference of hundreds of thousands of shekels. I'll go just in 10 seconds about the rules for tips for success. First of all, lose your expectation. Things are not the same in Israel, outside of Israel. You have to, it's not good or bad, just do it. Make sure you understand what you're going yourself into. Know what resources are available. Your agent is a great source of information. Your lawyer, will put you in touch with anybody that you need for the purchase. Understand the process and the paperwork. If some people want to know, just tell me, Yair, just tell us when to sign. People want to understand everything along the way. You have to understand according to what you want, know what comes after what level, who you contact at what time. And, the biggest thing is build yourself a team. Make sure you have the right people representing you, working with you to make sure this goes smoothly as much as possible. And it should go smoothly. There's no reason to any nightmare stories you hear. It can be done very easy and very smoothly.
Thank you so much.
And good luck.
May the fourth be with you. So I think this is definitely a first dive into all this information for many people who signed up for the webinar. So it is a lot of information for people to take in, but we will make the recording available and we will make the presentations available. So thank you.